The Secretary of War has blown up almost 100 narco-terrorists in the Caribbean trying to take boats full of fentanyl into our country. And he's saying that, to borrow from another famous military figure, he has not yet begun to drone or to fight in this context. He's doubling down on this. There's all this controversy around it right now. Let's dispel the nonsense. Let's get right down into the heart of it. What's going on? As we know, there is really a war on drugs that is actually a war that has been underway under this administration for some time. And the Pentagon and Joint Special Operations Command, the Special Operations Super Secret Squirrel branch of the military, has been engaged in strikes on narco boats, go-fast boats laden with mostly fentanyl on their way into the United States. We've blown up numerous boats. About 80 people have been targets. People involved with the cartels have been taken out in this process. So then the New York Times and others come up with this story. I'm going to read to you what they're saying. According to 5 U.S. officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity, blah, 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 Mr. Hegseth, ahead of the September 2nd attack, ordered a strike that would kill the people on the boat and destroy the vessel and its purported cargo of drugs. Each official said that Mr. Hegseth's directive did not specifically address what should happen if a first missile turned out to not fully accomplish all of those things. And the official said his order was not a response to surveillance footage showing that at least 2 people on the boat survived the first blast. Admiral Bradley ordered the initial missile strike and then several follow-up strikes that killed the initial survivors and sank the disabled boat. As that operation unfolded, they said Mr. Hegseth did not give any further orders to him. So, my friends, initially they said that this was just reported on by the New York Times. Initially they said that there was effectively a kill order given, which would be a problem. You're allowed to try to kill people who are a threat. You're allowed to kill people who are designated enemies of the United States for a whole bunch of legal and complicated reasons we won't get into. But if you have disabled somebody, if they are out of the fight, you're not allowed to just finish them off, right? This would be effectively the no bayoneting survivors on the battlefield approach to things. Well, what the New York Times seems to be admitting here is that that's not what happened. That there was a boat and it took more than one shot to take out the boat, and that's what they did. And certainly Secretary of War Hegseth is not backing down one bit on this. In fact, he said that he is just beginning to kill narcos.
Only just begun striking narco boats and putting narco-terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people. And Joe Biden tried to approach it with kid gloves and allowed them to come across the border. Cartels take over community, 20 million people, hundreds of thousands of Americans poisoned. And President Trump said, no, we're taking the gloves off. We're taking the fight to these designated terror organizations. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we're stopping the drugs. We're striking the boats. We're defeating narco-terrorists.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot more of what we are seeing. And this is putting tremendous pressure on Venezuela, as we know, because Venezuela hasn't been, until recently in the headlines very much, is a narco regime. Venezuela is only able to exist because of the hard currency that it gets, yes, in part from oil, but its oil industry is in rough shape, I'll put it that way. FUBAR in the military terminology. Its oil industry, but also the narco trafficking that it does is how the Maduro regime actually stays in power. That's where the hard currency, the hard cash comes in, billions and billions of dollars that they're able to pay off their security thugs and pay off who needs to be paid off and make sure that they can get the things in the black market that they need for themselves and their families. So there's that component. And then eventually we're going to have to think about how to deal with Mexico on all of this, with the Mexican drug cartels, because that is the so-called 800-pound gorilla in the drug war room, is Mexico. So we'll continue to get into that here in a moment. But look, the American Revolution didn't just happen. And our sponsor here, Hillsdale College, wants you to know why it happened. What were the reasons for it? In fact, there's all these incredible courses online that Hillsdale puts out just because they want people to know history, know America, know the truth of this country. And the Declaration of Independence, for example, is just one part of that era that school kids learn about, but there's a lot more. There's a lot leading up to it. We should be more well-versed, we the American people, in our own history and a whole range of subjects, including the book of Genesis, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic, the founding fathers, and you can get all of this for free. Go to hillsdale.edu/buck to enroll today. That's hillsdale.edu/buck. No cost, easy to get started. Check out these Hillsdale professors. They have such passion for these incredible courses, which are free. It's free. Great for the kids. Great for you. Hillsdale.edu/buck to enroll today. So now we have what the Democrats are trying to do here, which is seize upon this, no surprise, as a political issue. Here's Hakeem Jeffries.
The question in front of us, and I believe there will be bipartisan investigations in both the House and in the Senate in order to determine whether war crimes were committed and either U.S. law or international law or both were violated.
So they're saying it's a war crime. They don't even know the facts of this. They don't care what the facts of this are. I think that's something you always have to remember when you're dealing with Democrats. The truth does not matter. What matters to them is power and their ability to construct a narrative that is useful in their pursuit of power. As long as that is the case, that's all that matters. So while we'll look at this and say, hold on a second, the New York Times is even saying that Hegseth didn't give the follow-up, quote, kill order. That's not even true. What they want to do is turn this into, let's be honest, they want to make this Abu Ghraib. They want to make this CIA black sites doing enhanced interrogation. They hope to turn the war on narco trafficking into a political liability for the American people. And they don't care. People like Hakeem Jeffries, frankly, do not care in the least that there are 100,000 Americans dying and what is being done in the Caribbean right now, dying from fentanyl, and what is being done in the Caribbean is going to bring that number down by thousands. It's going to bring that number down substantially. You can already see importation of drugs. Trump talked about this this week in the press conference or in the cabinet meeting that he held, which is kind of like a press conference. The importation of drugs from the sea has gone down dramatically. That's a major shift. That's something that cannot be ignored. But there's going to be a lot of other things as well that get better, because remember, as I like to remind everybody, it's not just the drug overdose deaths, although that's the most horrific part of this, people dying and families shattered. But then there's also the addictions that are created, the crime that comes from those addictions because people are trying to feed the addiction. They can't hold a job, and the overall degradation of society and criminality that comes from fentanyl. Fentanyl is different than marijuana. It's different than other drugs. It is far more dangerous, far more addictive, far more deadly. And so we are this administration is taking a very different approach to it. And instead of looking at this as saving American lives, Democrats just view it as a political opening, a political opportunity. And in fact, perhaps nobody is a bigger opportunist on this issue than Mark Kelly, who's playing tough guy over here, going after Secretary of War Hegseth.
Runs around on a stage like he's a 12-year-old playing Army. And it is ridiculous. It is embarrassing. And I can't imagine what our allies think of looking at that guy in this job, one of the most important jobs in our country. In my view, after the President of the United States, it is the next most important job. He is in the National Command Authority for Nuclear Weapons. And last night, he's putting out on the internet turtles with rocket-propelled grenades. Have you seen this? This is the Secretary of Defense. This is not a serious person. He should have been fired after Signalgate. And then every single day after that.
Okay, 12-year-old playing Army. Look, I don't really think that anybody wants to hear Democrats who were pushing the transing of our military members, who thought the military should be increasingly a social engineering experiment in the racial Marxist lunacy the gender identity lunacy that they have been always pushing. Things like men and women, no difference in combat effectiveness for infantry units. That's crazy. And all of the data shows that that is not even close to the case, that men are overwhelmingly more combat effective, leaps and bounds, orders of magnitude compared to women in infantry roles. I'm not talking about helicopter pilots. I'm talking about people carrying packs with guns in ground fights, or on the ground in gun battles with people. Turns out men are better at that than women. Almost all men in the military are better than almost all women at that. That's just the case. But they lie about this stuff, and they pretend that we don't know what we know. And people like Mark Kelly smirk and honestly use their military service as both sword and shield. They'll attack everybody. And Mark Kelly's sharing, he shared his many medals. He's got like more medals than like Gaddafi used to walk around with. Oh, look at all my medals. And a lot of other people are saying, well, yeah, I served too. Those people are saying it. I'm not saying it. I served too, and I think you're a jerk, and I think what you're saying is wrong, and stop acting like you're beyond criticism because of your service. So, Mark Kelly is one of these rare Democrats who, I'll tell you, they tried this with Buttigieg, but I can say this because I was a bit of a what they call the FOBit in my day, forward operating base, the FOB. I was mostly, because I was an analyst, just on the base. Now, I actually did get out in the red zone a bunch of times, just, moving around country for different CIA-related reasons in Iraq and Afghanistan. But I wasn't a door kicker. I wasn't in active combat. And so, you got to know who you are, right? Someone like Pete Buttigieg, I think it was Rob O'Neill, who was on the SEAL Team 6 mission that killed bin Laden, who said that, yeah, Buttigieg served, and that's very nice, but it doesn't make him a tough guy. He served on a base next to a Starbucks. Now, that's harsh, but true, because there was a Starbucks basically on that base, because I was also on that base for a while in Afghanistan. And, if we're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about it, right? You can't say, I served, and therefore no one's allowed. How dare you criticize me to people who are talking about policy and the future of the country? They're allowed to make their arguments too. But our sponsor is Paradigm Press. Look, I think that we are entering a once-in-a-century opportunity for Main Street investors. This AI stuff is real. The world is changing very quickly, and politics and markets have this effect on each other that you have to understand to be a savvy investor. This is why I've launched a new e-newsletter called Money and Power, which I hope you'll subscribe to. Our portfolio, which we publish, this is now out there for people to see. Our portfolio has done amazingly well this year of suggested investments that we have, and that's just a fact. And we are pulling the big stories out of politics in D.C. and applying it to big moves in the markets, and so far it's been phenomenal. I explain all the details of this. In fact, something that I'm calling Manhattan 2, but it meant like Manhattan Project 2, not Manhattan so much the city. I explain all these details in an interview that is available for you to go watch. Go to offair25.com to watch it. That's offair25.com, paid for by Paradigm Press. But also, I will say this. Democrats, as you know, have no sense of humor, which is why they were so upset by the turtle thing. There you go. The turtle thing that Hegseth shared, which, I wouldn't expect the Secretary of War to generally share stuff like that, but, Pete's a funny guy. What can I tell you? Everyone's sick of the Democrats' games with this stuff where they decide what the boundaries of acceptable conversation are. They think that they're in a position to dictate to the rest of us how we can speak, not just the positions we can take, but even the words we can use to discuss those positions. I think people rightly get very tired of that. Trump is a massive counterstrike against that. He is the pendulum. Trump is like a one-man pendulum of free speech smashing in the other direction away from all of the woke nonsense the left has pushed on us. So there's a lot to chew on here, friends, a lot to get into. But I think that when you, just as we've seen in these American cities, when you start to see the results of some of these Trump policies, it'll be harder and harder for these idiot Democrats to take the positions that they have, at least without getting political blowback from it. Like the deployment of National Guard into cities is bringing the murder rate down. The destruction of narco boats is going to bring down this year, or give it a 12-month cycle, right? It has to, because it started late in the year, but it is going to bring down fentanyl deaths, I think, clearly, markedly, perhaps thousands of people. How many narco boats, and this is the question you have to ask any Democrat with a problem with this, how many narco boats are you willing to blow up to save 5,000 American lives from overdose death by people who are acting in predatory fashion, bringing the most dangerous and addictive substance ever known to mankind illegally into our country for the explicit purpose of breaking our laws and poisoning our people? How many narco boats are you willing to blow up to save 5,000 American lives? Because I think that's where we're heading. People are going to start to see this calculation very differently. So that's what we got for today, my friends, on this issue. Thanks for hanging. Shields high. Today, behind the news stories getting the headlines and our attention, there's an ongoing quiet struggle in the minds of thousands of women across the country. What to do with an unplanned pregnancy? So many things are pushing them toward abortion, but there's one organization out there, one group, doing everything they can to save lives. Preborn. Preborn clinics are out there to save babies' lives, and they start this process with a free ultrasound to introduce mom to her baby. Over 350,000 babies have been saved in this way. Please consider a $28 a month donation. That's the cost of an ultrasound. You could help save a life every month. This Christmas season, is there a better way to spend your money? Dial pound 250, say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, say the keyword baby, or go to preborn.com/buck, preborn.com/BUCK, sponsored by Preborn. That's the show.